Good evening, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the beautiful Corny Point Lighthouse. If you've been following my channel, you know I was here a few weeks ago doing some scouting. So I've decided this weekend to come back for the night and just see if I can get something on a bit of a sunset to see what's going to happen. The other thing I want to do this weekend is put together a video about how I break down long exposure photography so you guys can understand it. I see on Facebook a lot of people asking, how do you do this? What are the techniques? Lots of people jump straight to the filter component. So I want to try and debunk all that type of stuff, break it right down for you, go through the settings that I use, talk about when I use filters, when I don't use filters, do you have to use filters, and all those types of things. So right now I'm going to focus on getting this photograph, and we'll come to the long exposure part in just a moment. So it's the next day. It was a bit of a late night last night. I ended up getting some Astro. So if you have any tips on how to edit Astro, that'd be great. So this morning I want to kick off and go through the long exposure idea that I said. So a couple of tips. When you first arrive at your scene, the best thing to do is don't walk on the front of your scene, because if you walk on the front of the scene, you're going to be forever photoshopping out your footprints. So tip number one, don't walk in front of your scene. Walk up to it, figure out where you want to get your composition, and then set yourself up and go. I'm going to step this through step by step. So this morning I've got, in this scene, I've got no filters, no timer, no remote controls. So what I've got is, let's run through my settings. First and foremost, I just set my ISO to 100, or the lowest it can go. I leave it there and forget about it. So don't overcomplicate it, just 100, leave it there. Next thing I do is I'm running around f12 to f18. The reason why I do that is that's where my camera is sharpest out of the lens. The only thing I'm doing then is just adjusting the shutter speed. So with the long exposure photography, believe it or not, you want your shutter to stay open as long as possible. The only way you can really do this without a filter is to come down either really early in the morning, right, or heading towards nighttime. That way you're going to have less light going into your camera, which means you need it exposed for longer to get the shot. So with here, the other thing I'm doing is I'm watching what this water's doing. There's this nice little river. I've got a 2-second timer. You'll hear it beep, 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 and then it takes the photograph. So I'm getting a little bit of a smoothing water throughout that. Unfortunately, this morning I don't have too many clouds. One of the other things around long exposure photography is when you have clouds, the longer the water goes, the clouds will start to streak as well. So something you need to keep in mind. If you don't want your clouds to streak, maybe take 2 different photographs and then blend them together in Photoshop afterwards. So all you're doing is just sitting here, watching the water, seeing what's happening. There's a big wave coming in now. We're going to hit the go button, and we get some nice streaks in the water. One of the disadvantages of using a 2-second timer is timing. When things are moving towards you, you've got 2 seconds lapse between when you push the button and when the camera takes the photograph. So timing that water coming in is a little bit more difficult. So that's why we use shutter release cables. I'm going to go on to use that next. All right, so I've moved down the beach a little bit just to get a little bit more motion in the ocean to demonstrate this a bit better. So what I've done now is my settings are all the same. I've just introduced my, it's called an intervalometer, or a cable release if you like, if you're from the old school. This is just a cheap one off eBay. I think they're like 20 to 40 bucks depending on where you get them from. So I've come down here, there's a rock just here in front of my camera that I'm noticing that when the waves come in, it kind of surrounds the rock, gives this nice picture. And the other thing that I've noticed down this end of the beach is, I'm not really sure what they're called, but I call them drawbacks. So there's 2 ways you can do long exposure photography. When the wave is coming in, which gives you a bit of a flattened outlook, or when the wave is going out. And what happens when the wave is going out is you get these little streaks and lines, which you can use as really good leading lines to, when the water gets sucked back out again, it leaves these streaks. So a really good way of doing it. So I've also disabled my 2-second timer, so that's giving me much more control over the camera. So what I'm doing now is, first of all, I've got my back to the water, which is not the greatest idea, but I'm keeping one eye open. But so I'm just waiting for that wave to come in, which is going to flood this area, and then it's going to draw back, and then we're going to take the photograph. Okay, so I've hit a bit of a problem. The light is too bright now for me to be using my camera without a filter. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of them out of my bag and pop that on. The other tip just around the intervalometer is if it's windy, it's not windy here today, what you're gonna be careful of is with these things is if you hang them from your tripod, they can bang on your tripod, which means it'll actually create a little bit of shake in your camera. When you're doing long exposure photography, you want no movement in your camera at all. That's why we use intervalometers, so we can stand away from our camera and we can take the pictures as we need to and then come back in the scene and have a look. So, hands off your camera. One of the things I do is I try to hang the end of it just around this little knob just here, and that's just enough to keep it away from the wind. Alrighty, so I've got my filters out of my camera bag. Look, I use Nissi brand. I'm not sponsored by Nissi in any way, shape or form. Nissi, if you're listening, hey, hook me up. So I bought this kit purely because these are a glass filter. I'm really, really bad with my filters. I will destroy filters left, right and center. So I spent so much money buying Koken filters and those types of things, which are a resin-based filter, and I just destroy them. So I bought these. These come in a different scales. So there's an ND8, ND100, ND1000, ND10000, I think it is. There's also a polarizer in here as well. Kit's a couple of $100, but like I said, for the glass and the amount of money I was paying, yeah. So in days like today, I've got a couple of choices. If I use an ND8, it's going to just cut down a little bit of light. So if I want to not completely destroy the structure of this wave and just have it completely flat, then I can go for an ND8. If I really want to smooth this out, and I'm not sure if you can see in the background, there's a bit of wave movement, and smooth everything out, I can go to an ND100. So what's the difference? An ND8 is going to take away a few stops of light. I think it's roughly about 4. I'll fact check that and stick a comment below. I think it takes away a couple of stops of light. So what that's going to do is just darken it down a little bit for me to give me that exposure time. Now, when we talk about exposure times, when you're doing long exposure photography, you want to be from 0 to 30 seconds, all right? So obviously the longer that you go, the more smooth and blurred things are going to become. If you've got clouds in the sky, they'll start to streak more. So if you're shooting at 0.3 of a second, the clouds aren't going to move a lot at all. The water will streak a little bit, but still have some structure. If you go to 30 seconds, the other extreme, then your water will become completely smooth and your sky, if you've got clouds, will streak over. Now, when it comes to clouds, you've got to be a little bit careful. Big, thick, grey clouds, when they smear, become big, thick, grey clouds. They look ugly. It's almost as bad as having a blue sky like I've got here today. If you have high level kind of broken clouds and they will streak properly. So that's what you're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead, chuck a filter on the front of the camera and see what photograph we can get. Alrighty, so I've just put the ND8 filter on there. You've just seen the photograph that I've taken. So that's given me around about a 2-second exposure, which is about what I want for this type of scene. Without the filter, I was getting above 1 second, which is not what I want. Doesn't give me enough of that long exposure type of look. So yeah, the ND8 is giving me just what I need for this scene. Got to be a little bit careful of the sky. It's just to make sure I don't blow it out. So now it's just a matter of waiting for that water to come rushing in. When I think just before we went to the photograph, it flooded my feet, which is great. So we're just going to watch these waves, see what happens, and then click that shutter again. All right, I've just had a number of waves come through and snapped a few more photographs. Look, these photographs aren't going to be award-winning photographs. I really come down here this morning to demonstrate to you that long exposure photography can be really simple or really complicated. Well, not really complicated, but require a bit more equipment. You can do it without filters, without shutter releases or intervalometers and those types of things. Just remember a couple of tips around that. It's got to be a little bit towards either after sunset or just before sunset where the light around the area is dark. You want to make sure that your shutter speed is over 1 second, so from 1 to 30 seconds. When you start to have trouble with that, that's when you need to start introducing filters. 2-second timer is really, really good. It can be a little bit of an issue out here when you're trying to photograph water, and that's purely from the timing perspective. By the time you push the shutter and the wave that you want to capture, where you want to capture arrives, it's going to be 2 seconds later. So you can do it. I'm not saying that you can't. It just takes a lot of time and practice. A $20 to $40 intervalometer is a really, really good way of getting around that problem. So no more second timer. You hold that button, wait for your wave to be where it wants to be, then hit your button and go. The other thing which you want to do, and I forgot to mention a moment ago, is when your waves are coming in and out, keep clicking your button, all right? So if you're doing a 4-second exposure, just keep taking 4-second exposures, and you'll get the wave as it's coming into your scene and then retreating from your scene, so you might get something better. Filters are a great idea too. Filters, if you can invest in them, you can get lots of them on Amazon, you can get them from eBay, you can buy them from your local camera shop. Filters are a great investment. I tend to not use graduated neutral densities, which is where it keeps the sky dark and the foreground bright. I don't tend to use those anymore. I'm opting for exposure blending. So I've gone with just the screw-on glass type. Like I said, I use the Nissi type only because I destroy filters, but Koken makes some great filters. I'm not sure who else, to be honest with you. That's who I've used, Koken, in the past. I've used the big square slot-in ones as well. I just prefer not to use them anymore. I just go with the glass, but filters are a great investment. Get yourself a pack, get yourself something that's going to be decent and last you a long time. And there's the photograph I probably should have taken. But yeah, let's take it. So yeah, make sure you can get yourself a good set of filters. The other thing which is critically important to this is a tripod. Without a tripod, you are not going to be doing some long exposure photography. If you are, it's going to be blurry and you're just going to have to call it abstract. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you got something out of it. The biggest thing is get it there and give it a go. I see lots of people on Facebook asking how you do long exposure photography. Even things like, if you can't get out into a location like this, grab your kitchen sink, turn it onto the lip of your kitchen sink, turn the water on, let it flow like a little waterfall, and just practice at home and see how you go. When you get out here, you'll be able to know a bit more about what you're doing and you can give it a go. You're not going to always get the greatest photographs like this. This isn't going to be a wall hanger in any shape or form, but I'm out here and I'm giving it a go. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out. I want to get those numbers up, not for monetization, just allows me to do a few other things. So anyway, thank you very much and I'll see you in the next video.